Watch Dr. Drew's new show at 9 on HLN. Weeknights on HLN.
The topic now is weight and obesity. People who are heavy, it is a sensitive issue, and we are afraid to use, I think, a highly charged and maybe even emotional term. It's called fat. I'm kind of fat. I get fat. I've had trouble with it. Joining us to talk about this is Alison Sweeney, Days of Our Life star and host of The Biggest Loser. She, too, has had struggles with weight, as we all have. Alison is the author of The Mommy Diet. There it is. And I suggest Alison has been providing great resources for people for a while now. And how tough was it for you to lose the weight after baby?
Oh, it was definitely something I was aware of going into it. Now having two kids, the first, my son, he's 6 now, and I definitely didn't have all the information, and so I had a very different experience. It took me a really long time, and it took me time to wrap my head around it. I think part of what we're going to talk about today is sort of the emotional and mental attachment to it and how to handle it, you know, sort of in that way. But physically, once you understand and have the tools and you know the right nutrition and the right things that you need to do and you're ready to do it, it's not as hard as it seems.
And for you, the heat must have been really up because you're an actress,
yeah,
and you're on a show called The Biggest Loser, right?
Yeah.
And you had to sort of be a role model for them. Was it hard to get going with it because you have the stress of babies and stuff?
Well, the hardest part for me was actually during the pregnancy. I mean, I'm standing up there on the scale. We were shooting a season of The Biggest Loser, and I was gaining weight as everyone else was losing it. And there's something very odd about it, and you can definitely get into like your head and play mental games with yourself about how uncomfortable you feel. But you know, your doctor sets out certain parameters for you of how much weight's appropriate to gain and how you're doing. And I stood up there with all those contestants, and I thought to myself, if they're willing to give their heart and soul out here and lose all this weight and get healthy and change their lives, then I can do no less. So after my daughter was born, I really, you know, I talk about it in the book, The Mommy Diet, just how to take time and really learn to be a mom and take that time for your child. But then there does come a point at which you do have to take on your own body and get yourself back in shape and go after it.
It's the language you're using. It sounds like you're saying nurture your child, nurture yourself. Is that sort of the message?
100%. I think that so many contestants on the show come on, and part of their struggle is that they put everyone else first. They make everyone else the priority, their children, their spouse, their grandparents, you know, whoever. And their health is always the last thing, if on the list at all. Right. And so we talk a lot about it, and that was the first thing I said is, you know, sort of the parallel is always the airplane, where they have to tell women in particular that you have to put on your own oxygen mask first before you can help a child. And they say that for women because women are always the ones who are like, yeah. And I sit there, I heard it, I was like, no way, I would never do that. But it's true. If you take care of your body, first of all, no one else can do it for you. If you take care of your health, then you are more equipped and better prepared to help everybody else around you.
Really important message. I mean, that analogy I bring up all the time about the airplane and the oxygen mask. But you grew up on screen. Mm-hmm. I mean, I knew you since you were like 14, and you were a child star. So I sort of want to couch this question in the context of the history of your career. You must have had to be very body conscious early.
Yes.
Do you feel we are too body conscious?
Well, I mean, just my personal story is, you know, I felt I was a teen. I was a teen and going through puberty and sort of awkward body phases, and I definitely struggled with my weight myself as a kind of average teenager. And then being in a situation like Hollywood, where you're surrounded by very, very slim people, it's really intimidating. So I took it on a very personal level. Though I will say, the Days of Our Lives producers never made me feel awkward or uncomfortable. At one point, we did tell a bulimia storyline that I thought was really topical and relevant. But at the
Did you ever have an eating disorder yourself?
I didn't, no. But I definitely struggled, and I felt really bad, and I beat myself up about my weight, and every time I would eat something unhealthy, I would just ream myself mentally about it for days. And I definitely, it wasn't a healthy relationship with food I had for a long time. But I do think that part of that was, you know, sort of the industry and my peers and how I felt about myself, and getting a grip on my own mental well-being is definitely something that was hard and hard-earned, and something I still, you know, deal with.
Well, now that you've sort of looked at this very carefully, you know, so much of, because of all the weight issues and weight perceptions and awarenesses we have in this country, people kind of perceive food as the enemy.
Yeah.
And other cultures that don't have so much weight problem think as food is a good thing.
It's so funny, but I mean, and I actually compare it sort of especially at The Biggest Loser, we talk about the addiction to food. And the hardest thing about it is, I would say that with your show, I mean, the first thing you always say is like, okay, well, don't drink. don't ever drink again. Well, you can't say that about food. You have to continue to eat 3, 4, 5 times a day. You're always going to be around it. You have to have some of it. And that becomes such a slippery slope. And so that's something really hard that you have to learn to deal with. And I've had to deal with myself, never mind, you know.
In the last minute, I always like people to have some sort of takeaway for people at home. Do you have something specific they can do to make a step towards a healthier relationship with food?
For me personally, what I included in the book was the idea that I'm not a big fan of fad diets. I don't like extreme dieting. I think what I talk about and the way I live my life is that it's the whole rest of my life. So I just try to be healthy. Instead of looking at a number on a scale or a certain size clothes, I say to myself, I want to make healthy choices. And if I make a bad one, then the next chance I get, the next meal I have, the next day, I try again. So I'm never failing at a diet. I'm always just like, this is the rest of my life. And I got to be as healthy as I can.